There was a chalk outline on the asphalt where Theo Price's truck had been, and for one cold second, standing in the Appalachian fog at 6 in the morning, he thought somebody had drawn a body. It was not a body. It was a tow company's habit, a sprayed white rectangle around the spot where the wheels had sat, and a sticker slapped on the cracked pavement beside it. Towed. Unauthorized parking. Collier Ridge Owners Association. Beyond the empty space, the old coal trestle loomed black and dripping over the lot, the way it had loomed over everything in this town since the mine closed, and the whole morning smelled of wet shale and rust, and the cold iron of rails nobody ran anymore. Theo did not curse. 31 years of dispatching freight trains in the dark had taught him that the first reaction is the one that puts two trains on the same track. So he stood still in the drizzle and let the anger run through him and out. Then he took out his phone and photographed the sticker, the chalk, the time on his watch, so the hour would be in the frame. A signalman documents the scene before he clears the track, because once the track is clear, the scene is gone. The association office was a single-wide trailer at the lot's entrance, skirted in rust-streaked aluminum, and the woman inside it had a space heater roaring and a smile already loaded. Darla Finn, 54, a laminated badge on a lanyard, the brisk warmth of a person who has privately decided she is the only adult in a town full of children and is tired, so tired of doing everyone's thinking for them. Mr. Price, that lot's a shared community resource, permit parking only. It's all in the welcome materials. She slid a form across the counter without looking up. Recovery and storage runs $300. I do wish folks would read the signs before they make it hard on themselves. Theo looked through the trailer window at the tow truck idling outside, mud brown, exhaust ghosting in the cold, a magnetic decal stuck to the driver's door. Finn Recovery. That your husband's outfit? Wayne handles vehicle recovery for the association. Her smile held its shape, but her hand settled flat on the counter, fingers spread, the way a person stills a hand they don't want watched. It's all above board. He paid the $300 in cash because arguing in that trailer would have been arguing with the space heater, took his receipt, and read it twice in the cab before he turned the key. The timestamp, the truck number, the lot designation printed across the top. Then he drove the half-mile home to his mother's house. She had died in March, and he had come back to Collier Ridge to bury her and box up 40 years of a life that fit in a town like this and nowhere else, and stayed on because there was no longer anywhere he was due. In her garage, under a canvas tarp gone stiff with age, he had found his father's rolled drawings the week he arrived, and had not opened them, because his father had been a trackman for the railroad his whole life, and the smell of those drawings was the smell of a man Theo still missed. He set the tow receipt on the kitchen table beside his mother's reading glasses, which he also had not been able to move, and did not open the drawings that night. He went back the next day to settle it the way a reasonable man settles things, and asked Darla the one question that mattered. What gave the association title to that lot and the right to charge a soul to park on it? She produced a laminated parking regulation and a common area map with the lot shaded in a confident green highlighter. It's right here in black and white. Common area. Always has been. There's no parcel number on it, Theo said evenly. It's a marker drawing somebody made by hand. And there's no number posted on the lot either. No monument, no pin. I walked the whole perimeter this morning. It's been our lot as long as anybody can remember. The highlighter map went back into the drawer a shade too fast, and the drawer stuck, and she had to shove it. If you've got a problem with how this community runs, you're welcome to take it to court. That was the same sentence the county dispatcher handed him a week later, almost word for word, when his neighbor's old sedan vanished off the same stretch of asphalt, and Theo called it in on the man's behalf. Civil matter. Take it to court. The phrase, he was learning, was a switch the system threw to route a thing onto a dead siding, so no one had to roll a truck out to a problem they had no box on the form for. So that night, he finally untied the waxed string on his father's drawings and unrolled them under the hanging lamp, weighting the corners with his mother's glasses and the salt and pepper and the tow receipt itself. Track charts, signal diagrams in a draftsman's careful hand. And underneath them all, brittle and tea-brown at the folds, a railroad valuation map from the 1950s, the kind the line drew to inventory every foot of ground it owned, down to the culverts. Theo found the trestle, and the dead-end spur, and the flat rectangle where the lot now sat under its chalk. In 1954, that rectangle had been a loading spur, railroad ground, a separate parcel with its own description, never folded into any borough plat. He laid his thumb along the old boundary and felt the small click he used to feel when two schedules finally lined up. His father's lines and Darla's cheerful green were not in the same conversation. The association's reply to his written questions was not a reply. It was a citation. Mud on his license plate, $25. Then a second for parking outside the lines of a lot that had no lines. Then a certified letter threatening a lien on his mother's house, built to make a man with a paid-off home feel the floor tilt under him. Wayne's truck ran busier than ever. The storage fees ratcheted up by the day, and the town paid them the way it paid for weather and black lung, because that was how it had always been. It was Sal Iannucci who handed him the second thread without knowing what it was. Sal was 30, a volunteer paramedic with a jaw like a snowplow, and he found Theo at the lot one evening photographing the trestle from underneath. "They towed the squad truck once," Sal said, low and bitter, hands jammed in his coat. "Our backup rig. Parked it here between calls one weekend, and Wayne hauled it to his yard, and it sat 2 days before anybody knew. Somebody out there didn't get help fast as they should have." He looked at the white chalk. Nobody ever did one thing about it. Theo carried the valuation map to the county assessment website that night and laid the old lines over the new ones, panning and zooming the way he'd once overlaid signal schematics on a derailment, hunting the switch nobody admitted to throwing. And there it was, plain as a dropped signal. The lot belonged to no one, not the association, not the borough. It was an orphan parcel, ground the coal company let fall off the books when it dissolved, omitted from every transfer, sitting in tax delinquency for years because there was no owner left to send the bill to. 6 years of receipts, 6 years of a tow truck and a space-heated trailer charging a broke town to park on dirt that nobody on earth held title to. He needed someone who remembered how the bones of the county were laid, and found her in a brick house crowded with African violets. Eunice Cobb, 81, who had spent her whole working life as a clerk in the county tax office and could recite orphan parcels the way other grandmothers recite grandchildren. "That spur." She set her teacup down when he spread the map, her finger finding the rectangle before he finished. "Collier Cole let a dozen pieces go just like that when they folded. Nobody wanted land you can't build on. Over old workings nobody mapped right." Her eyes came up sharp and pleased. "Delinquent for years. And do you know what that means? The county can sell it. Upset sale every September." She wagged a warning finger. "But understand me, an upset sale isn't clean. You buy it subject to whatever liens and claims are already riding on it. You'd be buying the fight, not just the ground." Priya Nand, a sole practitioner title attorney out of Pittsburgh who treated orphan parcels like crosswords too good to put down, drove the 90 minutes south to read the file and started laughing softly halfway through. "Do you understand what you've got? If you take this at the tax sale, you don't just stop the towing. You become record owner of land an association and a tow company have run a cash business on, without a shred of title, for 6 years. That's unjust enrichment. Every illegal tow becomes a refund. She tapped a legal pad. Eunice is right that you take it subject to prior claims, so the first thing I do after you win it is run the chain and challenge anything sitting on it. You register quietly. You don't breathe a word. He built the case the way he'd built a shift report for 31 years. A board on the dining room wall, every fact pinned where the next could lean on it. The 1950s valuation map at the top, the county parcel overlay beneath, the tax delinquency record, and a widening fan of photographed fin recovery receipts, time-stamped across 6 years, that Sal and the neighbors brought to his door 1 and 2 at a time, as word moved through a town never once asked to keep its receipts. Priya sent the association a cease and desist, and on a wet Tuesday in the second week of September, Theo sat in the back of the county commission room with a numbered paddle and waited for an orphan lot to come up. It did not come up cheap. A lean man in a gray suit, Theo had never seen, was bidding hard on every delinquent parcel on the docket, raising orphan after orphan in a flat, unbothered voice. Keystone Asset Management, the clerk read each time he won. When the spur came up, Theo bid. The gray suit bid back without turning his head. Theo took it past him, past a single tight flicker of irritation, and bought the orphan spur for $11,400 in back taxes and fees. He had a deed, subject, as Eunice had warned, to whatever rode on it. He also had, watching the gray suit make a phone call before he reached the hall, a picture, far larger than one tow truck. Priya pulled the thread that night. Keystone had been buying tax certificates on abandoned parcels across 3 counties, then using friendly local associations to police and monetize the ground while title sat clouded. A patient harvest of everything the mines walked away from. Darla Finn was not the top of anything. She was one wheel in a longer train, and somebody else was driving. Then Sal called, and his voice had gone wrong in a way Theo felt before he understood. Sal had pulled the squad's old dispatch logs, chasing the exact weekend the backup rig sat in Wayne's yard. He read the date over the phone, and Theo set his coffee down very carefully on the table beside his mother's glasses. It was a night in March. It was the night his mother had her stroke. The night the second rig was not where it was supposed to be. The night the response came a long, terrible few minutes late. Theo sat with the phone against his ear and the chalk-white overlay glowing on the laptop, and did not trust himself to speak for a while. The lot had not just taken money. It had taken time. On the one night, time was the only thing that mattered. Keystone did not let the deed stand. Its lawyers moved to void the tax sale, waiving a prior tax certificate they claimed gave them first right to the parcel, exactly the kind of claim an upset sale rides subject to. But when Priya ran the chain, she found the rot in it. Keystone's certificate had been recorded against a parcel description that no longer legally existed, because the coal company had split the spur off decades before and never remerged it. They had bought paper on a ghost. The certificate was void on its face. It clouded Theo's title only until someone bothered to read it closely, and no one in 6 years had bothered. Still, the motion froze his deed pending a hearing, and they leaned on the one neighbor who had promised to testify about his own tow until the man stopped answering his door and asked, through it, to be left out of all of it. And then, on a freezing night with the windows ferned over white, Darla Finn knocked on Theo's door with nothing at all in her hands. "I know what's under that lot," she said, and the brisk warmth was gone. What was left looked scraped to the wire. "Wayne and I started the towing to keep our own lights on after the mine took the last real jobs. Then Keystone came around. They already held paper on half the houses on this ridge, and they told me, Keep collecting on that lot or we call your loans tomorrow." Her voice came apart at the edge. "My mother's in memory care over in Uniontown. Do you know what that runs a month?" I told myself I was keeping order. I told myself this town would fall apart without somebody minding it. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth. "I knew the lot was never ours. I've known for years, and I drew that green line anyway." Theo made her coffee, because his mother would have, and gave her nothing past that, because a late ambulance does not learn to forgive itself over one warm cup. The judge, days later, declined to confirm Theo's title on the papers alone. A contested prior claim, he noted, deserved a hearing, and set one 3 weeks out, which left the deed frozen and the lot in limbo while the real cold came down hard over the old hills. The cold cracked the thing open, and it cracked it literally. 8 days before the hearing, a whole corner of the lot subsided overnight, the asphalt sinking a foot into a void where the abandoned workings beneath had finally let go. A black-lipped pit at the trestle end, where 2 cars had parked the evening before. The state mine map office sent Sal the cross-section, and a licensed subsidence engineer, the borough called, walked the pit and signed the finding. The workings under these orphan parcels were failing. Keystone's own discovery would soon cough up the rest. An internal memo, dated 2 years back, showing the company racing to resell the surface ground before anyone ran a proper survey on it. The order Darla thought she was keeping had been sinking under her the whole time. 6 years of a town's cars parked, day after day, on the thin skin over a slow collapse. Discovery did the rest of the work. The subpoena duces tecum to Keystone and to Fin Recovery put the coordination in black and white. The split of receipts, the standing instruction to keep collecting, the buried memo about the failing workings. In deposition, Darla broke and admitted on the record she had always known the lot was never the association's to charge for. The Keystone representative asked to reconcile the 2-year-old memo with the company's sworn claim that the ground was sound, looked at the email, looked at his lawyer, and said he could not recall, and the court reporter typed it, and the silence after it did more damage than any answer could have. At the hearing, Theo stood and laid his board before the court, the way he had once walked a federal investigator through a derailment, without heat, one switch at a time, until the thing could only have happened the one way. The 1950s valuation map over the county overlay proved the lot had been a railroad spur, and never for one day part of the association's common area. The confident green had been drawn straight across ground the association never owned a square inch of. Priya put Keystone's certificate up beside the old parcel split and showed the court it had been recorded against a description that legally no longer existed: paper on a ghost. The tax delinquency record proved the spur a true orphan, lawfully his at upset sale. And the fan of Fin Recovery receipts, time-stamped across 6 years and totaled the way Theo used to total car counts on a manifest, came to $91,000 in fees collected on land that belonged to no one, and then, by deed, to him. Eunice testified to the parcel's orphan status in the dry, unhurried voice of 40 years behind a county counter, and made it sound as settled as arithmetic. Sal testified to the towed squad rig, to the late response, to the sinkhole where the public had been invited to park. The engineer's signed cross-section went into the record beside the photographs of the collapsed asphalt, and the courtroom looked a long moment. The court confirmed the tax sale. Theo had been the lawful owner from the instant the gavel fell in September, voided Keystone's ghost certificate, and found unjust enrichment against the association and Fin Recovery for 6 years of fees taken on his ground. Every illegal tow was ordered refunded to the residents. The towing was enjoined, and the whole Keystone certificate scheme, with its buried memo, went to the district attorney as a package and then up to the federals as mail fraud, because the gray suit had been running clouded paper across state lines the better part of a decade. The federal arraignment came in February, and Theo drove the 90 minutes north to sit in the gallery for it. He wanted to see whether the gray suit's face moved. It did. Once. When the clerk read the count for the resold subsidence parcels, the lot in another county where a porch had already cracked off a new-built house, the man who had stamped orphans like tickets finally looked at his own hands. He took a plea 3 weeks later rather than sit in a cell and gave up names to soften the fall. Darla Finn lost her board seat and surrendered Finn Recovery's tow authority for good. But because Keystone had held her loans over her like a switch over a track, the prosecutor let her plead to a charge that kept her out of prison and let her keep paying for the room in Uniontown. Theo did not push for an ounce more. He had spent his life deciding which train waited in the hole and which took the main, and he knew the difference between the hand on the throttle and the wheel that turns only because the line is pulling it.
He could have fenced the orphan lot and kept it, and no one in Collier Ridge would have said a word. Instead, he paid to have the void grouted and the ground engineered sound, every foot surveyed and signed off, and turned the dead spur into the one thing the town had only pretended it was: a real public lot, free to every soul who pulled in, with a single space at the very front, nearest the road, painted blue and stenciled in white, and reserved in perpetuity for the volunteer squad's rig. So no one in this town would ever again wait on help sitting in a yard. The association rewrote its bylaws that winter, and not one person fought it. No towing as leverage, ever. Every common area boundary tied to a recorded parcel number, an open register anyone could walk in and read. Eunice Cobb took a paid seat helping the county digitize its forgotten orphans, and let it be known they should have asked her 30 years sooner. Priya got more abandoned land puzzles than she could rightly bill, and Sal got his blue space and, by spring, a new backup rig to fill it. Wayne Finn, who had never said much in his life, repainted the tow truck plain white over a weekend, scraped the decals off both doors, and started hauling stranded cars off the icy mountain roads on winter weekends for nothing. No decal, no invoice, no word about why. The town let him do it without comment, which, in Collier Ridge, was as close to forgiveness as the weather allowed. Theo finished boxing up his mother's house, but left the kitchen as it was, glasses and all. At the front of the new lot, he set one plain sign, and below it, under a pane of glass bolted down against the everlasting drizzle, he mounted two things side by side: his father's 1950s valuation map and the first Finn Recovery receipt with its 6 in the morning timestamp still legible across the top. On a brass plate beneath them, he had 4 lines engraved, and on the morning they opened the lot, Eunice read them aloud in her dry, carrying voice, in the wet gold light coming sideways under the old black trestle, and laughed her dry laugh, and the whole town parked for free. Every parcel yields the right-of-way to someone. This one yields to everybody. The spur was never theirs. It is the town's now. Here's the part that sticks with me. Nobody in that town was surprised. Theo's neighbors had been paying to park on ground nobody owned for 6 years, and they paid it the way Collier Ridge paid for weather and black lung, like it was just a cost of being born there. That's the quiet horror of these stories. The scam doesn't win because it's clever. It wins because everyone's too tired to read the map. A laminated sign and a confident woman in a heated trailer are enough, and a whole town files it under, "That's how it's always been." And isn't that the thing they're really selling? Not the parking, the certainty. Darla Finn wasn't powerful. She was broke, scared, propping up a sick mother, handed a green highlighter by people meaner than she was. What made her dangerous was that she sounded sure, and most of us fold the second someone sounds sure. Theo's whole edge
was that he simply refused to. He didn't yell. He read the receipt twice in the truck, and then he went looking for the oldest piece of paper in the county, because he understood something most people forget. "It's always been this way" is not a deed. What gets me most is the blue parking space at the end, the one he painted for the ambulance that once came too late for his own mother. He could have fenced the lot, framed his win, and called it justice. He turned it into the thing the town had only pretended it was. That's the line between the people who win these and the people who just get even.
So I'll put it to you. You feel it too, right? That little voice that says, "Don't make trouble, just pay it. It's probably legal." That voice is the whole business model. Would you have read the map, or would you have paid the $300 and let it go? Tell me honestly in the comments, because I'm not sure I'd have caught it either.